We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. One conversation at a time. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
Hello, everybody. Thank you and welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. I am very excited to have this conversation today. We were supposed to have Miss Sheila come on as well, but she had a little bit of issue. She has a little one, so she had to tend to the baby. So that's okay, and we understand. So sorry you couldn't be on, Sheila, but we're going to continue on anyway. So today we're going to talk about pro-life, pro-choice, and I have a couple people here today who will state their viewpoints on it, and we can have the conversation. So I'm going to add them on here one by one. We have Miss Celia. Hey, Celia.
Hi.
Welcome. And then we have Pastor Todd. How are you?
Doing good. And you?
I am well. Thank you so much for being on. And then we have Miss Emily.
Hello.
That's Emily. Thank you so much for being on. So I am going to just kind of have each of you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself. So Celia, if you want to start first.
Okay. I'm Celia. I'm running for the 97th District State House of Representatives. I'm a teen mom, or I was a teen mom. My son is 49 or something. I forget. Anyway,
That's okay.
So the my position is that it's the trauma of an unplanned pregnancy, no matter what the woman chooses, that creates the issue in the future. So I married my child's dad, and he was abusive toward me, and we after 3 years of marriage we separated, and he took his own life. So it was so me and Jeremy started out with a huge tragedy, but we both moved on, and I was a high school dropout, and now I have a master's degree in social work. I'm a retired children protective services.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We will have Emily go next. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emily Larson, and I have a child as well, an unplanned, very unexpected pregnancy. That was a very big traumatic thing for my husband and I, as we had literally no plans to have any children ever. But at the same time, I now, after having gone through and moved through postpartum and things like that, very happy he's in our lives. And so, yeah, I am pro-life in this one.
Pro-life, okay. And then we have Pastor Rod.
Yes, I'm Rod. I'm Rod McTaggart. I am a grandfather and a great-grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so I got 3 great-grandkids. So, in fact, I'm going to have the honor of dedicating my youngest great-grandchild coming up soon as we make the arrangements for it. And so it'll be a fun time for us. So, and I as well am pro-life.
Pro-life. Yes, we had Sheila coming on as well. She works with the foster care community, and she is pro-choice. So kind of wanted a little bit on both sides to have this conversation, but that's okay. I'm here too, and I'll kind of weigh in, as I was not going to as much, but I will weigh in a little bit and share a little bit about what I feel. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first question was, of course, are you pro-life or pro-choice? And you guys already answered that. Two, you all are pro-life, and Miss Celia is pro-choice. So I want to ask the question: at what point do you believe a child is a life within the womb? Because I know there's much debate about that in regards to when is a child considered a human being. Mr. Rod, do you want to? I know you're a pastor. Do you want to be addressed as Rod, Pastor Rod? Rod is fine. Okay. If you want to go ahead and talk to that for me in regards to when do you think a child is considered a life?
Well, there's two ways you can look at it. I've looked at both, but number one is the secular science itself has stated that the development of a human being begins with fertilization, and the process that takes place is an ongoing process of life. And the second part of my reason for being pro-life is the fact that God's word has indicates in many places and speaks about his desire that we would choose life. And so as a pastor, as well as a person who's been involved, I was a former school teacher, graduated from Central Michigan in social sciences and education, that I do look at all the different sides of different things and look at it, but God has the final say as far as I'm concerned.
So I am also pro-life. And the reason I'm pro-life is twofold. One, yeah, I too am a Christ believer. And I believe that all life is sacred. And that's really important in any kind of discussion, I believe. If you don't believe life is sacred, we're not going to be able to be in the same book even to read off of. But I believe most people on this planet, Christ believer, whatever you believe or don't believe, most people believe life is sacred in some way. For me, life begins at conception. You immediately have your own DNA, and that DNA has decided what eye color you're going to have immediately. Boom, there you are. For me, even though I'm a believer, for me, a lot of it is science. I really struggled with it as a teenager and things like that, because I just thought, well, there's so many reasons why perhaps you should. But the more I dove into the science, and the more science has been able to tell us over time, science, of course, changes and comes up with new things. The more science I come up with, the more I lean towards conception.
Okay. Celia?
Roe versus Wade, it allows for a woman to have an abortion up to the 24th or 5th week, I think. So that would be, and to me, the idea of when life begins isn't the issue.
Right. Mm-hmm. I guess I like to ask that question because that's a big point for people, right? When we talk about pro-life, pro-choice, is when do you feel it's a life? And then people have the continuing conversation of course, making that choice. So that's why I asked that, is that people do have that conversation, and they do want to know, do you consider it a life at the time of, maybe making the choice of having an abortion. So that's why I asked that, but I understand your position.
I would also say that according to the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, 1.3% of all abortions happen past 20 weeks of pregnancy. So by far, the majority of abortion actually happens within the first few weeks of conception.
Okay. And I just wanted to say this real quick because I feel the need to address this. This was a hot topic, apparently, having a male on for today, because men do. People believe that men do not, have a say in this, which I do agree that a woman's body is her body. But I just wanted to clarify this because it became a bit of a conversation piece. The reason why I asked. And not that I really owe an explanation, but I thought this would be a good point to just bring up, is that the reason why I asked for a male to be on, and I asked, several people just don't want to talk about this topic at times. But the reason why I asked a male to be on is because although a man does not have the right to make a choice, in my opinion, over a woman's body. Men are impacted by our choices, right? I mean, when I want to have a realistic conversation, I have sons. If they were to ever, get a woman pregnant and she made a choice, which again, yes, it's her choice, but he still will be impacted by her choice. So I do like to get, different perspectives to see what they feel about it as well. If a man is married to a woman and, she may be facing death, having a baby or some type, or the baby may result in having some type of medical issue. She may talk to her husband to figure out what. So I wanted to add a male perspective, so people were very upset, apparently, because I did that. But again, I like having real conversations, and whatever we want it to look like in life is not always what it is, right? So when you have those conversations, we have to be honest that different people are impacted by our choices. Even though there are choices, they are still impacted by that choice. So I just wanted to say that, and I meant to say that at the beginning, but I just did. I just thought about it. So that's that. So we talked about that part. The next question is, do you feel there's a difference between pro-life and pro-birth? Okay, because I've heard that conversation as well, where some people feel like a lot of pro-lifers are actually pro-birthers. And what that means is that, pro-birth means, okay, they were born. Now what? People who work in the foster care system, and the adoption, system, CPS, they see a lot of stuff that happens once that life comes into this earthly realm, right? Where, okay, the baby has been born. Now what? So I know Celia is very passionate about this part. So I'm going to let her go first in regards to, do you think there's a difference between pro-life and pro-birth, and why?
Absolutely. I believe in, I feel that I'm pro-life because I believe that it's our responsibility to alleviate the climate situation I have grandchildren too, and I want a safe planet for my grandchildren. I believe it's our responsibility to provide the children of the future with clean water and air to breathe. And I also believe that in food stamps, 40% of all food stamp recipients are children, 47%. So that's almost half. I believe that as a retired children's protective services worker, I have seen the worst of what can happen to unwanted children. I've seen the worst of what can happen to children who were wanted, but who the parents were unable to take care of. Healthcare for all. Every child should have the right to healthcare. Every child should have the right to have their parent have healthcare so that their parent doesn't die at a young age. I've spoken about this before, that I was confronted, or actually I confronted them. I was at an event where there were some so-called pro-lifers. And I said, what other issue do you consider yourselves pro-life on? I listed off all my, pro healthcare, pro, etc. And she looked at me, she thought about it for a long time. And finally she just looked at me and said, well, you know what? I'm pro, I'm against euthanasia of our elderly people. And I'm like, okay. And so how many of those people who claim that they're not, that they're against euthanasia are saying that they shouldn't have to wear a face mask because it's only old people that are affected by the coronavirus? So that, so I do believe that there's a lot of people who claim to be pro-life who I consider not pro-life. They are forced birthers.
So basically, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that a lot of people that are saying that they're pro-life are what you consider pro-life is the different things that will impact your life in the long run, not just that immediate time, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
After children are born,
right?
Those kinds of impacts that are pro-life.
Okay, Rod.
No, I don't believe there's a difference at all between pro-life and pro-birth. What we're talking about is a timing of a person's development when you're talking pro-life and pro-birth. If you believe what the scientists say concerning the aspects of life beginning at conception, and it's a developmental process that starts at that point and begins to move forward, even to the point of eventually we come to the end of life and death, that it's all a process that we go through in a process of development. The question that is raised, which you raised, is what is the unborn? And it's very critical to our thinking today. And many people assume that the unborn is not human. But in reality, the DNA is there. Everything's in place for that child to be born. And we just can't allow people to just assume that because it hasn't been birthed, that it's not a human being that's in process of development. We got to look at this issue is not as an issue of choice, or as I say, as an issue of privacy. I know she would disagree with me on that, but our issue is, what is the unborn? Is it a human being in process or not? That is the big question that has to be answered. And it'd be kind of like pretending that like there's a 2-year-old in front of me, and his parents want to rough him up, so to speak, or maybe they don't want him around. And if that parent or those parents want to do that, should we trust them with that child? And she has been through this process with other people. And of course, we're going to say, no, you can't do that. But why not? Well, our answer would be because he's a human being. The same thing holds true in the womb as it does outside the womb. That's my feelings.
So what you're saying is that a person would harm or do away with I'm trying to find the right words, but do away with a child in the womb. You equate that to if they were to do something to them if they were 2 years old, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And the thing is that now, remember, we've started with Roe v. Wade. Now we're going to the point where we know a heartbeat takes place in a baby in the womb at about 8 weeks or less, depending that they can hear it. And now we've got some places now that want to go to killing the baby after birth. Where is it going to end? We got the guy in Virginia that wants to do that. We got New York that has wanted to leave that option there and make a decision later on. There's just no end. Then it eventually, ultimately, will go to the fact of euthanizing elderly people down the road, which is in some countries, they're doing that right now. So.
Okay, okay. Celia, I see you have a point. I'm gonna let Emily kind of go to, does she see a difference? And then I'm gonna let you kind of, because I can see it coming out. So Emily, if you want to answer this question.
So I think there's a real misunderstanding, I'm going to put it that way, on the side of, I don't really like the terms pro-life, pro-choice, so I'm just going to say that. I will say I think there's a misunderstanding on the side that is labeled pro-choice. I think most people, okay, you clearly have talked to someone who had not thought through things. However, I think most people know that pro-life means working to improve the system so that, of course, that child, their parents, have support. Do I think you should have to keep a child? No, you don't have to raise that child. That's not a. Now listen, I have two adopted siblings. My mother comes from an incredibly abusive background. I know that it's not perfect and the society is not perfect. And my siblings were not adopted as babies. They have horrible memories of living with their biological parents. Okay. So I know the system is not perfect, but I would say if we put as much effort into helping create community support, so if a person did want to keep the baby, they would have that support. Maybe they would get extra food stamps. Maybe they would get extra Medicaid automatically. You know, there are many options I feel that could be made available, but instead we're all stuck on this one point. And I think I agree, things are not perfect, but things don't become perfect overnight. And instead of making it has to be one or the other, I would much rather see safety nets and community options being built up so that if a person does change their mind, if a person wants to, they feel like they will have support. They feel like they won't be going it alone. And I honestly believe that's how most people who are labeled pro-life feel. They don't want anyone to have to go through it alone. That would not be the goal, to just stick you in a room and now you've given birth to a child. Good luck. Of course not. No one would want that for anyone. No one would want that for anyone. You should have the right to put your child up for adoption. And that's a whole other discussion about how the adoption system in this country is so screwed up. I understand that there are many steps. Okay. But I think if we never start, no great things happen. And we've seen many great things that do happen in time across the world. And so I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't start the conversation and start the ability to move towards that.
No, and I do agree with you. See, I do agree with you on that, and I think that to Celia's point, and I'm going to let her talk here in a sec. But I think what happens is that I think people do believe in community and things of that nature, but I think that maybe what she's speaking to more of is the actual legislation, the actual systems are not being built up to support these ideas, right? Not talking about within like, our smaller communities, but the actual system. So I'm going to allow, and that's just my take on some of the people that I've spoken with in regards to this. So Celia?
I wanted to do 2 points. One, to Rod's comment about in New York does have a law that says that what the law says is that if your baby has a diagnosis that's incompatible with life, that you have the right to have the abortion and then to hold that child and to give that child the best passing that is possible. That's what the law in New York says. It says that if your baby is born alive in a late term abortion, then you are allowed to hold that child. You are allowed to make a decision about whether you want to have that child to have life support or whatever, or you are allowed to make the decision whether, the same as you, when in my parents' case, they both had do not resuscitate orders. And this allows for parents to have a do not resuscitate order kind of thing for their late term abortion. They're not killing babies. They are allowing babies who are born to have a natural death is what's happening. And it has passed. And to Emily's point, I looked it up, and currently there are, at any point in time, there are 3,000 children in Michigan who are available for adoption. And of those 3,000 children, about 352 actually are in adoptive placement at any given time. So the idea is not so much that abortion is a good choice for a child as it is that we have way more children than we have abortion we have way more children that are available for adoption than we have families who want to adopt them. So that's a huge issue. And like Aaron followed up with, I agree, you know, that most people who consider themselves to be pro-life aren't the politicians. When you vote for a Republican who is supposedly pro-life, you are voting for someone who is going to cut food stamps, who is going to cut unemployment, not allow people to have health care. Those, and you know, believe me, I would prefer to get to have, like in Sweden and Denmark, they have a whole litany of choices when they go to the ballot box of people to vote for. And some of those people are considered pro-life, but they're also pro food stamps and pro safety nets, etc. And in the United States, unfortunately, we have a two-party system, and you either vote for someone who is supposedly pro-life, but absolutely pro not taking care of children, or you vote for someone who is pro safety nets, pro taking care of people, and not pro-life in your terms. So that's where we are, and that's the reality. So.
Okay. I know Emily wanted to kind of respond, so I'm going to allow her to say something here.
First of all, I want to say, okay, so we all seem to agree that the system safety net is not as it could be. Okay, so we're all on one page. I think for that, and so I think that's a positive thing. I would like to say something about the children who are diagnosed in the womb, because I was one of those children. My mom, because I'm a missionary kid, I grew up in Benin, West Africa, third world country. That's not the technical term anymore, but believe me, it's third world. And my mom, her body started having contractions month 1. She had not been able to keep a child. And the little Catholic nuns there didn't know what else to do except to give her Valium so that I wouldn't come out. And my mom knew, of course, she knew Valium and babies don't mix. But if it's that or lose your baby, she was like, okay, I have to give this a try. I'm not even supposed to be able to get pregnant. So I'm going to trust. And so she took it for 3 months, every other day. And when she finally got back to the States, the doctor said, you should abort because she's going to be brain dead. She's going to be malformed. There's no way. There's no way. And even at the scans, I didn't look right. And mom just said, no, because this child has been given to me. Now, I know not every woman can do that. That takes guts. Let's be real. That takes real guts to say that in the face of your doctors telling you that. They were able to give her things besides Valium to stop her contractions. But I was an unknown, and I came out totally healthy, and I passed every test the hospital had right off the charts. Clearly not brain dead, not deformed, so that's great. I know not every child is so lucky, but I also know plenty of people like me that the doctor said one thing, and it just wasn't like that when they were born. I think we have to be really careful about how much doctors are important. I believe in doctors, but doctors aren't gods, and they can make mistakes.
Okay.
I think that's the issue for me.
Sorry, I have a question in regards to that, and it was further down, but we'll talk about it now. So you have a woman that is told that her child is going to be A, B, C, and D, right?
Right.
And she is impoverished. She has, basic health insurance, if any. She does not have a big support system. What do you guys say to that? Because I know a lot of people who are in those positions that do not have a support system. That do not even have an advocate to explain what these doctors are saying. Sometimes you have doctors, they start telling you all this stuff, and it's hard for you to understand. You're scared, you're fearful. I was a teenage mother, and I know most people know that. Some people don't. I was a teenage mother. Thankfully, I had a support system that was there for me, but I couldn't imagine being, 15, 16 years old and going that alone. And thankfully, again, all my children were very healthy. Actually, I was popping out babies like left and right. So, I don't have the same issues that some people have, but what do you guys say, especially people that say, basically have the baby no matter what? What do you guys say to parents that, because it's a real question, when they are up against those odds, what do you say to that? Rod, I'll let you answer that if you like. Oh, I'm sorry. I muted you to get the feedback. So go start over. I'm sorry.
I have a great deal of empathy for people that have those things where the doctor makes those predictions and so on. I have a niece they said the baby was going to be born with the brain outside of the head, and
Oh, wow.
the heart had a bad heart and a hole in the heart and a bad valve, and it had some other issues. I think with the foot, there was a foot issue, and the parents decided to have the child. And the child was born. They said the baby would not live. They tried to convince her to have an abortion, and they said, no, God's given me this child. We're going to have this child. The brain was not outside the skull. It did have an element with the foot. The heart, they needed to close the heart up and do a surgery on it. That child is still alive today. She has a disability from some of the things that transpired, but she's a very loved child, and she's a very loving child. And so the doctors, in terms of the term is the quality of life, they were wrong, and they're trying to convince my niece and nephew to get rid of that child. The Bible says, and this is where, as a Christian, I have to look at some of this stuff, but in Isaiah 45, 9-11, it says, woe to him who quarrels with his maker, to him who is but a potsherd among the potsherds on the ground. Does the clay say to the potter, what are you making? Does your work say he has no hands? Woe to him who says to his father, what have you begotten? Or to his mother, what have you brought to birth? This is what the Lord says, the Holy One of Israel and its Maker, concerning things to come. Do you question me about my children, or give me orders about the work of my hands? And as a Christian, we believe that we are framed and formed in our mother's womb, according to Scripture. And so from a Christian perspective, that would be one of the things that we'd have to look seriously at. But I'm telling you right now, I have empathy for those people that have to make that difficult decision.
Yeah, and I still have the same question. Really, I mean, what do we say to the people that once that baby is born, and again, it sounds like I think you said your has the support system, but what do we say to the people that don't have that? Like, what are other resources then, to be able to help them along the way? Because, like I said, I see both sides of the argument here. Celia, do you want to say something?
I feel like our technology has gone far enough that come far enough along. They're doing surgeries in the womb all the time, and God bless them for that we have been able to do that. When we're talking about abortions where the babies are incompatible with life, we're talking about fetuses that past the 20 weeks age, and and they can tell that. When I was working, I had a toddler in foster care, and his mom was pregnant, and they called me when the baby was born that she had, and told me, this baby has a condition that's incompatible with life. And that was the first time I ever heard that phrase. And it was like my second year or something that I was working. And I'm like, what does it mean? And, they disconnected the little girl from her. The mom made the decision, and what goes into these decisions involves social workers and a whole contingency of experts that help parents with these decisions. It's not just, oh gosh, my baby's not going to be perfect, I guess I'll destroy it. There's whole systems in place to help make this decision. And anyway, in this situation, they turned off the baby's life support monitor, and she hung around for 2 more years. So that's what this is about. It's about, and this goes back to that, to the law in New York again, where it's parents who have these late-term abortions are mostly wanting their children with all their hearts, and then something happens and their baby is not going to live, and so they have to make this heart-wrenching decision. And so there's another situation too that I wanted to throw in here real quick, and that's I have 2 people who are very close to me who had tubal pregnancies. Tell me, is the pro-life choice the one where you have the abortion, or is the pro-life choice the one where you don't have the abortion and mom dies? I mean, even in a situation like that, the choice is pro-life. An abortion is pro-life. So anyway.
Okay. Emily?
So I want to address particularly the thing about tubal pregnancies. My older sister actually had 3. Of course, that's not abortion. The baby was never, ever going to be viable. It got stuck in there. The baby couldn't survive. The mom couldn't survive. I do not think there's a pro-life person who would say, oh, you have to stick with the baby can't even survive. It hasn't reached the uterus to get any of the nutrients that it would need. That's what the uterus is for. We all know. And so of course not. Of course, that's a pro-life choice because you're saving the mother and also the baby. Let's call it a baby. It's a baby. It's not a fetus. It's a baby. The baby is never going to be able to live because it's stuck there. That's how that is. So I don't think there's anyone in the pro-life movement. Okay, I know there's some crazies out there.
Generally speaking.
Okay, but generally speaking, rational people are not going to say that a tubal pregnancy is an abortion because that baby was never, ever going to have a chance to be born. Of course not. So we agree on that. To me, that's like a non sequitur. As far as Erin, to get back to your point, I don't think there's an easy answer. And I am not saying that the position of pro-life is simple. It's really, really not. Because it's hard and it requires people to take responsibility. Why was that 15-year-old pregnant? It's a good question. I'm not saying there aren't things that happen to people, but why was that 15-year-old pregnant? Come on, we live in a world where we know the results of sex. We don't have a world anymore where kids think that if they do it standing up with shoes on, they can't get pregnant. Kids know. And they're educated in the schools. They can ask anyone. They can go to the school nurse. They can go to the school counselor. And parents aren't even told. That's a whole other question for another day. But the thing to me is this. Kids know now. It's not like a mystery. So at a certain point, you have to take responsibility for the fact that you chose to do. Okay, sorry, I'm sounding angry. I'm not angry. I'm passionate. Just want to clarify.
That's okay. I get often told that too, so I understand.
To me, it's a lack of responsibility at a certain point. And I think at a certain point, people don't want to be responsible for their actions. They want to be able to do what they want to do, but they don't want to have to face any repercussions for that.
So are you
in a lot of places. We see that in a lot of places. This is not the only place. People want to be able to drink and then not get a ticket if they get caught driving drunk. People get angry about it. Why? You knew.
So Emily, it sounds like you're talking to the point of when women get pregnant and then they decide, oh, I don't want the baby, I'm going to have an abortion, not in the same light of, hey, this may kill me or it may harm the baby. Or are you speaking more towards people that casually have sex and then say, I want an abortion? Is that kind of what you're speaking to?
I know, of course, there are contingencies. I'm not talking about rape. I'm not talking about incest.
Because I want to talk about that. Because I want to know, do you guys have any? Are there any exceptions to the rule? When a woman gets raped, I mean, that's one of the questions. When she gets raped and she's violated, and I'll ask you, Rod, as well. When a woman is violated, and now she has this baby within her, and she's kind of tasked with the choices of, do I keep the child as a constant reminder of a time when I was violated, or do I have the child? And I know people who have done both. Okay, I know people who have still had their child and love that child and use it as healing. So, Rod, do you have any comment on that? Are there any exceptions? Oh, I'm sorry. I keep muting because we have feedback and then I forget and I get excited. Go ahead, Rod. I'm sorry.
When we were talking about the situations concerning abnormal births and stuff like that, that's one issue.
Sure.
As far as, I mean, I'm not a woman.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm not going to be the same category, but as far as the Word of God goes and seeing those things, I've seen there's been people that have been doctors and lawyers and people that have done wondrous things when their mothers were raped, and yet the mothers chose life, and they were very positive helps to society. They ended up doing things that were quite extraordinary. James Robinson, who is a pastor, His mother was raped and she chose life. So on the basis of just that aspect alone, God just says to choose life. And that's how I would feel about it. If any of my daughters or any of my grandkids, I would have to say, please choose life. And,
So you're saying there's no exceptions is your answer.
only like the tubular pregnancy thing, where it's an absolute situation that the mother will die, and that I believe there is that aspect that yes, that could be a pro-life, but it's really not abortion. It's, I think they call it.
No, that's not abortion. So really, so you're saying there are no exceptions.
In all reality, yeah, I believe there's no exceptions in those situations.
Okay, Celia, and then Emily.
Actually, Rod keeps saying talking about God, and in Leviticus, there is a passage, and I'm not being able to find it at this time, where God actually orders someone to have an abortion, and so that's I'm sure if you typed in Leviticus and God orders an abortion, you would be able to find it.
It's not there.
Actually, he says what God says is that this woman should have her uterus flushed out, is what it says, after she has sex with this other man who's not her husband. So anyway, but going on from there, I lost my train of thought. So I'll pass to Emily.
Okay, Emily, because I'm trying to look up the scripture that you're speaking of. But go ahead, Emily, please.
Okay. So as to the exceptions, I'm kind of, I think, probably a bit more moderate. In that, I would say, okay, I'm moderate to a point. I'll put it this way. If a woman or girl is raped, of course, she has the right to go to the hospital immediately, get her cervix scraped, or go get the Plan B pill. Okay, the Plan B pill is now available in pharmacies. You have the right to do that. And guess what? It means no baby. It means the question of abortion is not even a question. You can get help. Okay. And thankfully now we do not live in the 10s and 50s where, that it's her fault. Thank God we don't live in, I mean, there are some people who.
Well, that still is a thing, but I get what you're saying.
But in general, our culture does not see it as the woman's fault if she gets raped, which is a wonderful change that has occurred in our culture. There are people to help you now. There are people to help you. And you can literally walk into the hospital, say, I was raped. They will do the rape kit. They will ask you what you want to do. They will help you. It will be done. It will be done.
Is that the only exception that you have? Is that the exception that you have? Is that if a woman is
rape, incest, and I know there are some medical instances where there have been, I'm not talking about fallopian tubes because we already talked about that, but where the baby is properly in place, implanted in the womb, 4 weeks along, boom, okay, she's there. Much further along, there becomes medical issues. To respond to Shalinda's question, Plan B means there's no baby, so it's not an abortion. It makes me
Oh my gosh.
So wait a minute. I thought it was conception. So that's where I'm confused. That's where I'm confused when people say conception. How long into conception? Because that's where I've always been confused when I talk to people about that. Is it conception or is it like a week after?
So me personally, okay, life happens at the beginning. So about 4 weeks, we all know it's about 4 weeks, cells implant in uterus.
Okay.
What cells are in uterus, if we leave them alone, 97% of the time, they grow into a baby, right? If we just do what we're supposed to, feed ourselves well, it's going to grow into a baby, right? So once that set of cells has implanted, it's going to be. Before then, and listen, I know that for a lot of people that just drives them nuts. Before then, before implantation, It's not a baby yet. Can't be. Not yet. It can't, literally.
Okay. Celia?
I remember what I wanted to say, and I think Emily is moderate in her views, but also I wanted to address the whole issue of the 15-year-old getting pregnant and the whole idea that you have to take responsibility. And the problem is if you go out drinking and you get a ticket is a ticket. If you are irresponsible and you end up pregnant, it's a baby.
I understand, but it was
Let
just
her finish her thought, and then we'll go ahead and finish your thought, Celia.
I just wanted to say that a 15-year-old should not be made to bear the responsibility of her indiscretion when that responsibility is a baby. And I can tell you right now, and I don't want to get too overboard in my stuff, but I had a shitty childhood, and I'm not going to go into detail. But so yes, I made some shitty decisions, and it turned out that I had a baby, and I'm so grateful for my boy, because I don't know where I would have ended up without him. But so I just want to say that to say that you should feel the consequences of your irresponsibility just kind of I could go on about cases all night long, but I do want to say this. One where I had a 12-year-old girl who was pregnant by the neighbor boy, and the 12-year-old girl's mom was allowing that boy to come over and spend the night with her daughter because she wanted to be a grandma. Now, and she did have a baby. And she was 13 by the time the baby came. And to say that somehow these children should be penalized because their parents were irresponsible just makes me crazy. Sorry.
In that case, I would say that sounds like a loud rape by the mom, frankly. I mean, of course, it's not the girl's fault.
But I guess the point is, I think the point is that we don't always know people's stories, right? We don't know their background. We don't know their upbringing. And, for me, I don't know. I've seen the other side of it. I've seen children that have children, and children that I've worked with that have no idea. They've had no type of structure in their family. They've had no type of guidance. Everything has been dysfunctional, right? And a lot of us are coming from a position of privilege in regards to having a certain support system. When you are on your own, right? When you have parents that call you stupid, ugly, fat, they already told you that this was going to be your life. You grew up impoverished, and you have all these things against you. I guess for me, I am a little bit empathetic to them deciding, okay, this was my life. I had a terrible life. I mean, I've been miserable every day. There are children that cry literally every day, right? And they have no place of refuge. And then they have a baby, right? So when you have, when you're in those type of family structures and you've had people talk about you, put you down, your self-esteem is so low, okay? And then you go into these situations looking for love. And I know this is very cliche sounding, but it happens. They have these babies or they get pregnant with these babies looking for this love. And then they don't even know how to love themselves, let alone love a baby. So I guess my question is always, do we have any empathy for that? I know we say just have the baby, and I hear Joy, see her saying life is precious. We need to care for all life before it's born. I get it. Like, trust me, anybody that knows me knows I think that we should take care of people and we should love on people. But I guess I just try to get people to see, do we see the other side of this? These people that that go through these hardships and they really don't have any support. You know, I mean, we don't. I mean, what do you say? And then the child ends up getting abused or abandoned anyway. And then what happens to that child? So, Rod, would you like to speak to that? Oh, sure.
Well,
Oh,
okay. First of all, what is life?
okay.
And when does it begin? I just got to get back to that point. When does life begin? And it begins at conception. Science says that it begins at conception. And then it's allowed to process through. It ends up in a human being.
Okay.
When we take that life, we have murdered that child, that life. We've cut that life short. And it's not the child's fault that it was conceived. And yet we're allowing the taking of that innocent life, that innocent blood, to be done because it's inconvenient.
When people say inconvenient, I don't know, and I get what you're saying. So I'm not trying to be combative. What I'm saying is that yes, it's a life. I agree with you. I definitely agree, and I'm not a person that goes out and tells people just go have an abortion. Like I don't just throw the abortion word around. But what I am saying is that yes, the child has a right to a life, but what type of life are we guaranteeing for them, right? They have, I do believe all people have a right to life, but then once they come, what type of provisions are we making for them to have a good quality of life? That's my question. You know, that's my, I mean, I was adopted, okay? I was a child that once I learned of my history, the family I came from, totally dysfunctional. Okay. My birth mother tried to kill some of my siblings. Okay. She was very abusive. She definitely had some mental health issues. My point is saying is that she had 9 kids. Okay. And she tried to kill several of them. She abandoned some of us, left me as a baby on the bed crying in my own poop. Okay. I'm saying that to say I was adopted and thank God I was put into a good home, but everybody doesn't have that opportunity. They're not blessed that way. So what do we say to them? You know, I mean, I came out okay. Thank you. Yes, I'm so happy. You know, my mom adopted me and she did well, but it's a lot of kids that don't have that opportunity. So what are we putting in place for those children that if we want them to have the baby, which I had no problem with that. Okay, you have the baby. Now what?
That's what I was trying to say much earlier, is that I know we don't have all of the social systems in place, but neither have we tried, because I feel like we've been stuck on this issue right here instead of saying, okay, so what can we do? If the goal is to change it, what can we do? But I feel like I really don't like getting political, guys. Okay, like I'm literally a registered independent. I'm a milquetoast fence sitter.
But we know this is a political issue. It's become a very political issue.
Yes. So the problem is it is. So my problem is neither set have done anything. I mean, really, nothing to really solve the problem. Nothing. And by solve the problem, I'm not talking about abortion. I'm talking about how do we actually help? What job programs do we have available for training people? What kind of additional education? Now, I know in some places, listen, if you're an unwed single mom, you can say, listen, I'm an unwed single mom. I flipping need some help. They're going to help you with housing. They're going to help train you for a job. They're going to help you with a lot of things, but that's not in most of the country. That's usually just centered around big cities. Let's be real. And they don't have the capacity to help everyone that would need help, right? I think that a lot of this boils down to, do you think life is valuable?
Oh, of course, and I don't think any of us would say that it's not. I guess for me, we have these absolutes, right? These extremes on both sides. There has to be some type of common ground here, some type of gray area, because this is not a black and white issue. And I know for you, Rod, it is black and white. It is very black and white, and I respect that. For me, I guess because I've seen, I've seen the dysfunction. I've seen the abuse. I've seen the pain. I've seen the misery. I've seen children wanting to commit suicide, and it gets me emotional talking about it because I've seen it. So for me, it's like, we say have them, and I don't agree in murder with murder, and I don't think that that is something that I would ever advocate for anybody to just go kill. But what I'm saying is, what next? We can't be so black and white to where we're not seeing this big picture, because when you have children coming to you, they want to kill themselves because their life is such a disaster. And that's been their whole life. I mean, I don't know if people can imagine that when your whole life, from the minute you hit this earth, right, till you're, 12, 13, 14, has been complete misery. What kind of life is that? What are we offering to them then? If we say, okay, come on here, what are we offering to them? And that's my question. So, Rod, I'm gonna let you kind of answer that. And I know you are very firm in your beliefs, and I respect it. I really do. But what do you say? What do you say to that? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. There you go. I'm just going to stop muting you. But what do you say to that? I'm sorry.
Well, to me, the bottom line is I'm not God. And for me to make that decision of who's going to live and who's not going to live, that's above my pay grade. And it's not for me to say, I got to go by what God's word says, and that all life is sacred, it's valuable. That God in itself, he has a purpose for every life. He has a plan for every life. He has a process that we have to go through for every life. And his desire is that we all end up being a product of his hand and to be formed and fashioned in the likeness of his son. We don't know who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. We don't know how that person's life is going to turn out. God does. I don't. But all I know is I would choose life and take my chances if I was the one in the womb.
And I agree, and I agree with you in regards to every life matters, and we should not we don't get to make that decision. But again, my question is, what happens after they're born? That's my question. I'm not disputing if they should be born, so to speak, but what happens after that?
That is a social issue that comes after birth. And like it's been said, certain things need to be put into place.
Like what? What do you feel?
There needs to be people. Look, there's a number. I will dispute something in that there's a lot of people who are looking for children that haven't been able to get children because they want to have them. And I know that she said there's like 3,000 kids and only so many are adopted and so on and so forth. But there's also been other statistics and data that says there are people who are looking for kids. Some of them do. Some of them are born with drugs in their system. Mm-hmm. I know of a very great young man, Christian man, who adopted a African-American young girl who her mother was on crack, and the child was born with crack. She's in a great home right now. She's being raised up in a right way with a very loving family and parents. I can't make that decision, and nobody else should make that decision either as to who's going to end up where. That is something as a Christian that we simply have to rely upon God, obey his word. His ways are higher than our ways. And we don't always understand his ways in all these different things. Yes, we can have empathy for him. Yes, there's ways that Christian groups have come and tried to help those things out. Yes, we're failing in some areas, no doubt about it.
Okay, well, at least you can admit that.
What don't we fail in terms of people and government? But the thing is, it's still not our decision.
Okay, Celia?
2 points. I posted, I don't know if anyone can see it, but I posted the Michigan Adoption Resource Exchange and the phone number. Does that show up anywhere?
I can get it. Go ahead. Yep, I can show that, but go ahead with your point.
Okay, that's my first point. And my second point is someone just commented about the Rod's comment on the African American baby that was born addicted. In Arnett County, our minority population is like 0.3% or something, 0.03%, and we've had thousands of babies born addicted. So I just wanted to make that point. So
it is a sad thing that happens. No matter the community, it's sad, and it is sad. And to me, that goes back to earlier choices the parents made to get on drugs. And so again, to me, a lot of it stems from responsibility. And I do not know why our culture is afraid of telling people you haven't been responsible for your life.
So do you think
responsible for their lives?
Do you think that so as a child, do you think that the way they are raised can impact their poor decisions that they don't even realize are well? And so I asked that to say, when we say, take responsibility for your consequences for your, poor decisions, blah, blah, blah. They're children. So, and this is not even an advocacy for, pro-life, this is just, but this is the part that I think people miss sometimes, is that children are molded and developed a certain way based on their environment, their culture, background, and even religion, right? I mean, because Rod, I know you spoke to Christianity. I was raised in the church. Okay, I got pregnant and abortion never even crossed my mind because, I was raised that way. But also I had a fear of coming home to say I was pregnant because of the how I felt I would be crucified, even with that, by saying, okay, I'm not married and I have a second baby out of wedlock. And so my point in saying that is that sometimes the things that are ingrained in us sometimes does help us make these decisions. And I don't think that it's fair to say that because they made that decision, they just have to deal with it. Because sometimes things are, just like when a child sees a parent do drugs their whole life, they think that's normal sometimes, no matter how many times people say it's not, or they see their parents, pass out that's been their culture, that's been their environment. So I don't know. I have a hard time with that when a person is especially when they're younger. Now, when you're older, but even then, people are still kind of, they do stuff based on their upbringing and their culture and their environment, and sometimes out of necessity. So that's a whole other thing, because I could talk about women who have sex with men for money to survive, or women that we think are immoral, but we've been blessed with different circumstances, so it's easy for us to say that. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Celia, you were trying to say something?
I just wanted to, addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, those aren't choices, those are illnesses. And again, because someone has made a bad choice, in Emily's words, to become a drug addict, and then they make a bad choice to have a child or to have unprotected sex, and then a child is produced. Again, it comes down to, those are the people who absolutely should not be having children. Their punishment, a child should not be someone's consequences for making bad decisions. A child is a child and should be loved and cared for and taken care of, and not consequences for a bad decision.
To grow up and maybe make different decisions. Listen, I hear you. I hear you. And I am, okay, I want to say I empathize. Okay. And logically, I hear you. But there are also people who start out as crack babies and get themselves out. I think a lot.
And I want to just say something. White babies are addicted to crack too. So I know
Yes,
we can say,
actually,
I know we can say African American, but I want to just say, okay. I just want to add that. But go ahead, Emily.
Yes, exactly. I was actually going to bring that up. Thank you. Because one of my dear friends adopted he wasn't sick. He was 6 when they got him. And he thankfully by then was not on crack, but his mom still was, and he'd been born that way. And it's been a whole process, and because of the crack, he has ADHD and ADD and like all of these things. He's a good kid. He's a lovely kid. Of course, he suffers the consequences of what was done to him, right? Like he didn't choose to be on crack. We all can agree on that. But it did. And yes, I know not every home is great. Not every kid will get to be adopted. Part of that is, and I understand partly why, and we're going into a slightly different discussion, but since we've been talking about like what happens next, part of it is our adoption system is way too complicated. Way too complicated. And there are families who would like to adopt, but sometimes it is restrictively expensive in some states.
No, I agree with that.
Adopt. And sometimes like the waiting that the state makes you do to be able to get a child is ridiculous. I'm not saying you should be able to go in like they did in the old days, line them up against a wall and be like, I want that one. No, of course not. I think it's good that we have people come and, check out the home and make sure you're going to be a semi-acceptable parent and all of those things. But I also think we make it too difficult. We make it way too expensive.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. And I've seen some ugly sides of foster care. I've seen ugly sides of adoption where people get adopted and they still go through abuse in the adoptive home. So I guess it really, I mean, it's all a toss up. Who knows how things will end up, right? But again, for me, I guess, and I am a little sensitive to this because I've seen the ugly side of it. I've seen the ugly side of a child living their whole life in total misery. And again, I get your point, Rod, in regards to, not playing God, so to speak, but again, like I said, seeing the aftermath of that decision. And, I don't see a lot of people, rallying around these people that are going through the stuff at that time, and that's my question, which still I don't feel has been answered in regards to what do we do once they're born then? How do we ensure that these children are cared for and loved and, given a good quality of life? That's my question, because I get it. Please let them be born. Like I said, I was adopted. So I'm thankful that she didn't abort me, because you guys would not be blessed to have such a gift here on earth, right? So, I mean, I'm so thankful for that. But, what do we do? What do we do once they're here then? I really did want to, and I know we're past time, but I really wanted to touch on Planned Parenthood, because that is such a big topic with people. So I wanted to touch on Planned Parenthood and what you guys felt about Planned Parenthood. So, Celia, you want to talk about that first?
Like I said at the beginning, an unplanned pregnancy, whether a woman chooses abortion, a woman chooses adoption, a woman chooses to have a baby, the child. An unplanned pregnancy is a traumatic experience for anyone at any age. So the best way to prevent that trauma is to have the best birth control available. And I was a member of Right to Life for a very brief period, once back when I was pregnant with my second child. And I got a pamphlet in the mail, and it said, we're opposed to abortion and we're opposed to birth control and we're opposed to everything, you know, because if a woman thinks that takes birth control, then that devalues life and blah blah blah. Now we have all these situations where if you're taking the birth control pill and an egg gets fertilized and isn't allowed to plant, and that's an implant, and that's a form of abortion, and an IUD does the same thing, and so that's a form of abortion. But what we need to work on is making sure that there are as few of unplanned pregnancies as possible. And one way that can guarantee that there are no more unplanned pregnancies is if men use a condom every time they engage in sexual intercourse. This is if we start putting more responsibility on the men and at least make it 50-50, then we're going to solve the problem of unplanned pregnancy, and we're going to solve the problem of having abortion.
Okay, so I have to ask a question because I have to be on both sides of this. You say you want to put more responsibility on men because I did have this question here too. You know, and putting on the condom every time, strap it up, and what's the saying? You know, never mind. Strap it up before you tap it up. I had to get it out. I'm sorry, Pastor Rod. But that's what people say. But my point is that okay, if we say that we want men to do that and that's partly their responsibility, why do we also say that they don't have a say in the decision of abortion? That's also a question that I wanted to address because, again, like I stated earlier, a couple people were very upset that Rob was on here. And, you know, I do believe that men are impacted by our choices. So I wanted to get input from him, and also because I know he believes in it from a religious, standpoint. So why are they not allowed to speak on that part of it then? If we want to put some responsibility, go ahead, Celia. I see you itching.
Actually, I just wanted to talk about the castle doctrine.
The what?
The castle.
The castle?
Yes, the castle doctrine. It says that if anyone enters a man's home, then he has the right to kill them. And this is my castle, and I get to say what goes on here, and that is my bottom line. That
I get that, but I'm talking to the point of you saying that you want them to have some responsibility in making sure the baby is not here. So once the baby comes, how come then they have no right to have any say in it?
They can say whatever they want to, but my thought is that this is my body, and I get to say what goes on here, and I don't even have to tell what goes on in my doctor's office because I have the right to privacy as affirmed by the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade in 1973. So that's my answer.
Okay, Emily.
I'm gonna paraphrase very badly, Chappelle.
Okay.
So as long as I don't, hey, if you do not want a guy to have a say, cool, but you don't get to ask for child support because you didn't let him have a choice. That is my when I heard that I was like, yeah, that makes sense because I also feel conflicted because we can be real for the women. Most of it falls on us for responsibility, right?
That's not right.
But, well, not if you're in a partnership, but if you're a single mom, yeah. Most of it falls on you, right? Taking care of that child. Most of it falls on you. But here's the thing. If you decide to have okay, so now I'm playing devil's advocate myself. If you decide to have the baby, you don't get to go to the guy and say, now you owe me child support if you didn't want him to have a say in the first place.
But
And that's what Chappelle said, basically, for short. Um, and he said it, of course, much more funny because he's a comedian. But I kind of thought that was fair. I'm like,
Okay, Celia and Rod, you can chime in anytime you like.
if we teach our sons that they are responsible for the birth control, and this is for future, that it's at least that we can at least say that that there's a responsibility there, that it's not all up to the girl or the woman or whoever, then yeah. Then
I agree with you. It has to be both parties, and both parties have to be responsible.
It's time for us to put more expectations on men, and whether
No, I get that. I'm playing both sides here. That's my question though. Okay, if we're putting more responsibility on them and demanding more from them, can we then say, but now you don't have any say? That's what I'm trying to understand this.
the responsibility is on the man to help to prevent the pregnancy. I'm not saying that after there's an accident. So anyway, I support Planned Parenthood and birth control of all kinds, whatever is available, in order to prevent pregnancy and the trauma of pregnancy. I also support a woman's right to choose what is best for her, whether she's a teenager or a woman. And so that's the issue. So.
Okay, and please understand that I'm asking questions that have been raised in conversations surrounding this. So I just because people do ask, okay, when is a man allowed to? And I say that as maybe if there's a husband, boyfriend, or even a one night stand, right? And he's been, he might be 43 and he's been wanting a child for 20 years, and then they both together make a choice to have sex. They both together do what they do, and then she ends up being pregnant. Does he not have any say in it? I'm just asking that, throwing it out there. Rod, what do you feel about that as the man?
Well, I feel a man has to take responsibilities for his actions. And if that action produces a child, then he needs to take responsibility for that child.
Do you feel he has a right to make a choice in it, is my question.
I think he needs to be included in the discussion of it, definitely. Ultimately, we all know it's going to be the mother that will be making the final decision. But I do believe he should not be ignored. I do not believe that he should be left out of anything, that he should, because I've heard and I've seen the situations where men have wanted the child, and the two were consensual. They came together, they had their sex, she got pregnant, and the father wanted the child, and he offered to take the child if she would have it, and he was denied his right to his fatherhood. That is something that really is a difficult situation for someone who really wants a child. There's a lot of guys that would be just as happy. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting rid of it.
Which is true. Yeah. Which is true. I have one last question, because I know we've gone over, but this is such a big conversation, and I get very passionate about it because, like I said, I've seen different sides of things. But I want to ask, if abortions and all clinics are abolished, they're done away with, right? Do we fear that women will lose their lives again by having underground or black market procedures, right? So if we just say, to hell with all of it, it's over, we're going to close all abortion clinics. I believe that women, like they've done before, will still try to make a way out of no way of what they want to do. So what do you guys feel about that?
Sorry, please go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
we call it the term is reproductive justice now. And the reason for that is that we are never going to prevent rich women from having abortions. We are never going to prevent middle class women from having abortions. We are only going to prevent poor women from having abortions. And so that's why we call it reproductive justice. And I don't think we're ever going to have to worry about there not being any abortion, because if there were, if abortion were ended tomorrow, if Roe v. Wade were overturned, the Republican Party would be totally destroyed, because it's the right to lifers that keep them in office, because everybody knows that we need to do something about climate change. Everybody knows that we need to do something about clean water and clean air, and they would be flocking in droves to leave the Republican Party if they overturned Roe v. Wade.
You think so?
Yes, there would absolutely be a risk to women, and there would be women who died the same as they did, because, like I said, in Leviticus there was an abortion, and so
I have to find that. I'm going to try to find that once we get off.
Been able to find that when we've been
It's there. It's new to me.
and if you listen to John, I can't think of his name right now. He will tell you. What?
Who are you speaking of? I'm sorry.
His name is John, and he's a celebrity, and he's celebrity.
Okay, I thought you meant Rod. I'm like, his name is Rod.
I was talking about this other guy who will tell you exactly where it is in Leviticus. But anyway, we've had
People twist the scripture too to make it fit their desires.
excuse me, but
I wonder.
we've had abortion from the beginning of time, whether God ordered it or not. We've had abortion since the beginning of time. Roe v. Wade has given us safe, affordable abortion, and that's the difference. And again, like I said, if we did away with Roe v. Wade, we would have deaths, and the deaths would be the poor women who could not afford to fly somewhere else and get their abortion. Not rich women, not middle class women, just poor women. And so
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Emily.
I'm a person who believes you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I don't think there will be legislation. I think we should have legislation as science. Now we know a lot more about the fetus. We know that the fetus feels pain at 20 weeks. We know that the heartbeat starts at 6 weeks. We know a lot more things now than we did when Roe v. Wade came out. We just do. And we know that the baby actually feels more pain until at least week 30, because they have not developed any pain blockers. So to me, that's kind of a big deal too. Not very nice to do that to someone. So the big thing for me is I don't think there's going to be legislation that rolls it back. I honestly think that's a pipe dream, but I do think that there has to be modified legislation. It can't be whenever you feel like it. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It can't be because
whenever you feel like having an abortion.
And I just think emotionally I can't handle it. I think there has to be legislation based on science, because people's feelings change, mind change towards my baby.
Okay,
Some
right.
of us who are constitutional or originals constitutionalists, the Supreme Court got out of their lane and they made law, which they're not supposed to make law. And we have a gutless legislature and an executive at the time that did not correct that and bring the balance. The other thing is
what's the balance? Which is
which is that they didn't have right to make legislation. There should be no Roe v. Wade in any way, shape, or form, except that it came back to the legislature to make it a law that abortion was legal. And you know what? It would probably never happen because you wouldn't get enough legislators to go along with it to have it happen. But our courts overdid what their rights were to do. We've lost that breakdown in our courts. The other thing is, the baby is not the woman. The baby in the body is a child in the body, separate yet within the woman. And therefore, that baby should be protected because it is life. And that's the other thing. And that baby, when people don't realize it, but that baby, as she had mentioned earlier on, that Emily mentioned earlier on, that baby has, how would you like it if somebody grabbed your arms and ripped your arm off you? How would you like it if you had your legs torn from you, or your head twisted or stabbed in the back as you were being partially born? How would that, what kind of pain are we talking about here? And yet we're not regarding at all the life of that child or the pain that child's experiencing, because it's convenient or it's something that we want to have happen. And I'm going to use that word convenient again. But that's what it is. It's because it's not an opportune time. It's not the ideal situation, but I know a lot of kids who are born in not ideal situations that have made life good.
Two things, Brad. Number one, the Supreme Court decision in 1973 was a majority conservative court. Majority conservative, not liberal justices. Number two.
That's not right either. That's not true necessarily either. It wasn't a conservative court.
True. It was a conservative court.
Okay, so what's your next point?
The next point is that, again, the only time an abortion is provided to a woman after 24 weeks is in the case of the life of the woman, or the case of where the baby has a condition that's incompatible with life. And if the baby has a condition that's incompatible with life, then the parents, that is a group decision. It's not a decision made by a mom who says, oh, this is inconvenient for me today. It's a decision that's made by social workers and doctors and nurses, how to do it the most with the most empathy.
Well, and we do know it's both sides to that, because we do know that there are women that get pregnant and decide to have an abortion because they just felt like having an abortion. We do know that, so we can say that.
Not late term abortions. In fact, 1.3% of all abortions.
Okay.
1.3% of all abortions happen after 20 weeks of gestation, and that's according to the University of Massachusetts Medical. That was an article from 5/30/19.
Can I ask, Celia, this is not to be combative. I know we're trying to wrap up here, but for clarification, you keep using the phrase incompatible with life. I can't think of a lot of things that would be. So can I ask you to clarify that?
Incompatible with life. It's a medical term. And like I said at the beginning when I was talking, I said that my first experience with that term was when I was a CPS worker, and I had removed a toddler, and his mother was pregnant with a baby, and we were anxiously awaiting for the birth of the baby because it was going to go into foster care with the sibling. And the nurse called me and said, the baby has a condition that's incompatible with life. And it means things like there's no gray matter in the brain. And like I said before, it doesn't mean that their heart isn't working, because these are situations where parents wanted their baby with all their heart, but then the baby was not.
It sounds like you're talking about something pretty rare then, right? Incompatible with life sounds pretty rare.
It is, and that's why it only happens 1.5% of all abortions happen after 20
But that doesn't
gestation.
equate 1 million abortions a year.
So 1.5 the
It doesn't
anyway.
equate 1 million abortions a year. And I hear you, but that
So I just want to say this because I know we've gone way over time, but I'm really enjoying this conversation because again, I see both sides of things. I see the value of life, but I also see the value of life after life has happened, if that makes sense. Like I said, I've seen it, and I've seen the struggle that people go through, and to Rod, to your points, for people that aren't or don't believe in that ideology, they may feel different, and we understand that. But again, I just wanted to kind of conclude with this and just kind of allow each of you to just say ending. What you want to leave people, I guess. I remember when I wanted a hysterectomy, right? Because I was like, it was stuff going on, and they wouldn't even let me have that, and so I just find it interesting that they won't let you have a hysterectomy, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I just think about that because I feel like sometimes people's fights are not directed in the right places sometimes, and I will stand firmly and say that I believe that we should fight just as hard as we do for people to go through with the process of life as when the child gets here, because I feel like sometimes we fight so hard for the child to be given the opportunity to get here. And then, sorry, Celia, I muted you because of the feedback.
I need to be muted. I need to be muted. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. So, I do feel like we need to fight, if not, harder once they get here, for these babies that are brought here and then just kind of left. They're left to their own devices in these bad situations. So, Rod, I'm going to let you say some closing remarks as the man that was invited here to give some of your thoughts. So go ahead and leave us with what you would like.
Well, I've already pretty much said what I wanted to say concerning the issue of abortion, but I wanted to mention something about Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
I have very strong feelings about Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
And Planned Parenthood, I believe, is a genocidal organization based upon what Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, or at least clearly promoted that. And she also promoted compulsory sterilization as well as segregation. There's a lot of babies who are being killed that are being targeted. And the genocide is on behalf of the African American community and many times the Hispanic community. There's about 13%, I believe, of the populace of this nation is African American or Black, but yet they amount to 38% of the abortions.
There is some truth to that. I did do some research in that, so carry on.
And so there's a prejudice that it goes along with that. In fact, there was a time where someone had offered, and they did this deliberately, but they offered to give a Planned Parenthood a simple amount of money. They said, but this money has to only go to killing Black babies, period. And they accepted the money. And went through with it. Now, if you've done the research on Margaret Sanger, if you've done the research on the other, then I'll just cut myself short. But it is not a good organization. It evilly targets low-income people, and that's part of the things that she said there, as well as it targets Hispanics, African Americans, and others. And there's whites. There's more whites, obviously, that gets abortions than Blacks, but there is a purpose.
Can you say that again? Because people don't believe that. Can you say that one more time, Rod? Because people don't believe that. What was that last thing you just said?
I don't remember what I last said. I said they target.
Well, you said something about there were more whites that got abortions than.
Yeah, there is, because of the populace numbers. Yeah, there is. But it's disproportionate,
Yes.
again, to the African American community.
Yes, I do agree with some of that. Yes, yes. Celia. Oh, and I do want to just mention real quick, Planned Parenthood does do more than just abortion. So we do know that. You don't think so?
Actually, if you really look at what they put their money on, they don't do what they say they're supposed to do. And that I've researched too.
Okay, okay. Celia is literally beating on the screen, so let her speak.
2% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortion. They do low income health and mammograms and things for women and birth control. For goodness sake, I can't believe that anyone who claims to be right to life is opposed to easy access, low cost birth control.
There's other clinics.
The end. Emily's turn.
There's other clinics. You don't have to go to Planned Parenthood.
Exactly. That's where you go to get your abortion. Other clinics. You go to Planned Parenthood for your birth control. Emily's turn.
So Celia, what's your closing remarks?
Mine is that, and I'll say it again because it's so true. We are not going to end abortion. We are only going to end, if abortion is ended, it will be the end of safe, legal abortion. It will not be the end. Safe, affordable, legal abortion. It will not be the end of abortion. It will, and we need more birth control, and legally safe abortion.
Okay, okay, and we know birth control is not 100%. Trust me, I know, but that's another. That's a whole other conversation. Okay, Emily. Thank you, Celia. I'm joking. So go ahead, Emily.
Speaking of knowing birth control is not 100%, I was on it when I got pregnant. And I never so, couple of things. I have no problems with birth control, but I don't think abortion is a form of birth control. Abortion is after you've gotten pregnant. Sorry, it's now happened. And I think it is traumatic. It was very traumatic for me. I suffered with, my therapist called it PTSD for all 9 months of being pregnant and 9 months after. But it's a baby. And he didn't know it was going to be a he. He had the right to be. I was just the vessel for a while. And hey, we know when it ends. 9 months. 9 months is not that long in the span of your life. If you choose to keep the baby, then yes, your whole life has changed. Hopefully for the better. I know it's not that way for everyone. These are hard decisions. We don't have all of the systems set up like we should. So if you said something about fighting just as hard for after they're here. Yes. And this is where I think actually, to be political for one moment, but it's really a moment of unity, both sides should totally be on the same page with this. Republicans or pro-lifers should totally be advocating for the life of these babies because they're babies. And Democrats or pro-choicers should totally be advocating for systems that actually work to help people after the baby has arrived. And it doesn't mean that there won't be crossover. Of course there will be crossover. I'm going to go back to what I originally said. I think we've become stuck on this idea instead of trying to fix the system.
Okay. Thank you. And I do just want to put this in there real quick. 9 months can be very long for some women, depending on what they go through. I've seen women that go through hell literally through the whole pregnancy. And I just wanted to throw that out there. It's not, it can be a lot longer, feel like a lot longer, I should say. But again, I thank you guys for coming on and talking about this. This is a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. It can be very touchy. We can get very passionate about what we feel about it. And again, I see both sides of it. When I've had a child tell me that they wanted to die, and what was why am I here? It really does something to me, right? Because then I say, okay, how have we failed this child? How have we failed the parents? How have we not educated them, in a way to be able to be better parents or be able to provide for their children so they don't have to work 3 jobs and be emotionally unavailable or not there physically. It's so many different dynamics that go into that really impact a child and the way that they live their life. So I do see both sides to it. I do believe that women should have the right to make the decisions, but I also believe that men are impacted by it. So we can say that they don't have anything to do with it, the decision making, but they are impacted by it. I mean, that's just a given, right? That they, if they thought they were having a child and then it was gone, they're impacted by it one way or the other. So again, thank you guys so much for the conversation. Thank you so much for being transparent and honest about what you feel. We need these type of conversations. So I wish you guys a great evening. And again, thanks so much. Much appreciation. Bye. Wow, well, we went a lot further, but a lot longer than I thought. But this is really good. This conversation was great, and again, I appreciate each person that came on. It was. I learned a little bit, and I'm really open to dialogue. So, again, I see both sides of what people are saying, and working with at-risk youth before, working in the juvenile detention system, working with families who have had their children taken away, watching that child's pain, watching the parents' pain. I mean, it's different things that I've seen that help kind of sculpt my mindset when it comes to this. But it is something we need to talk about, and we need to have the right systems in place to ensure that once these children are born, they are cared for, they are loved, and not just thrown away to the side. So that's really important to me. I'm very passionate about that. But I also enjoy these conversations because we have to be transparent with each other. We have to be able to have these kind of talks to be able to heal and to be able to help and to be able to care for each other. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight as we talked about pro-life and pro-choice. And, if you have babies at home, go love on them, go give them a hug. And thank you guys. Have a great evening. And again, I appreciate you guys. Bye.